Thank you, everybody. I want to welcome you to an Eastern Shore tribute to Paul S. Sarbins. I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and it's a mystery as to why I'm standing here. First of all, I'm going to call up Marvin Moss, a former Sarbins Chief of Staff, to do our Pledge of Allegiance.
I bought new shoes for this event, and they make me walk like a duck, so I will try. I have just one thing to say. I wish Peter Marutis were here to do this instead of me. Please, while you are standing already, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Marvin. When I was a reporter, I used to call Marvin for comments, and he would hang up on me. You should have programs on your table, and I want to point to some things on the program. Please look at the sponsor recognition. These are people who have made this thing happen. And I want to recognize the event beneficiaries. There are two. The Salisbury University Sarbins Lecture Series, which has been a great thing in our community for many years. And of course, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore Scholarship Fund, which is also a great thing. There's also some information on how you can contribute and help these two groups, and that would be great if you could pay attention to that. Because I mess up everyone's names, I would like now for the elected officials who are in the room, or former elected officials, to please stand for recognition. We do have one special politician in the room. I want to recognize him, or actually her, Judge Katie Kern O'Malley. I want to recognize her, and she's with someone who was a governor, Martin O'Malley. And I was told not to go off script, but my daughter still calls Martin O'Malley Governor McDreamy. Do you hear that a lot, Governor Okay, sorry. Also, I'd like to recognize the two local presidents of our universities in our area. We have Dr. Heidi Anderson from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And the man who is our host in this beautiful building tonight, he, of course, is Dr. Charles White of Salisbury University. Next up, we have someone who I can say I knew her when. Now she's very important. She's the Speaker Pro Tem of the Maryland House of Delegates, and she's Delegate Cherie Sample Hughes. She's going to say our grace for dinner.
Good evening, everyone. Certainly a blessing to be with you on this evening. Would you bow your heads? Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening to say thank you. Thank you for the peace that passes all understanding. We confidently know that you have everything we need. Our community, our state, and this nation has been blessed by the strength that you placed in your soldier, our beloved Senator Paul Sarbins, as he fought tirelessly for your people. We are forever grateful. My hope is that we as a people build on his legacy and exhibit the hope, the love, and the integrity that he embodied. As we partake of this meal that is prepared for our nourishment this evening, we must never forget that it is you that makes the sun shine to grow the fruits and the vegetables. And it is you that watch over the animals and provide the nutrients that they need to thrive. Continue to watch over us and bring peace to our entire world. This we ask in your name, amen.
We've got two great families here tonight, and they're at two different tables. They're at the Pappas table and the Sarbins table, and I would like to introduce the families of Senator Paul Sarbins. First, we have Paul's sister, Zoe Sarbins Pappas. You want to stand up and wave? We have a congressman in the House, John Sarbanes, who's Paul's oldest child. Dina Sarbanes is here. She is John Sarbanes' wife. Michael Sarbanes is here. He is Paul's second child. Antina Sarbanes, Michael's son, is here. Michael's daughter, Christina Sarbanes, is here. Zoe's son, Dimitri Pappas, is here. And Alina Pappas, who's Zoe's daughter, is here. My childhood hero at the Sarbanes table, Tony Sarbanes, Paul's longtime brother, is here. And the person who makes Tony Sarbanes what and who Tony Sarbanes is, Billy Sarbanes, is here. I was just explaining to Judge Jimmy Sarbanes recently that it was a speed trap. It was illegally constructed, and I apologize. But Judge Jimmy Sarbanes, Tony's son, is here. My favorite Sarbanes, Margot Sarbanes, is not here. But Beth Scheller, a former Wycomico Teacher of the Year, is here, Tony's daughter. And because not enough people in the Sarbanes family are named Zoe, we've got one more, who's a good friend of my daughter, Annie, and probably also refers to the governor as McDreamy. Zoe Scheller is here. And last but not least, Garrett Scheller, Beth's husband, is here. Oh, wait. There's another page. Peggy Sheeran, who's Billy Sarbanes' sister, she's here. Someone who's not here, but is here by video, Senator Ben Cardin. So we're going to hear a tribute video from the senator right now.
Paul Sarbanes embodied the American dream. He was the son of Greek immigrants who opened a restaurant in Salisbury and lived upstairs. He was the first student from Wycomico High School to attend Princeton. At Princeton, he won a Rhodes Scholarship to attend Oxford, and then he earned his law degree from Harvard. But Paul did not just embody the American dream. He spent his life in public service so that others would have a shot at the American dream. He clerked for a federal judge and worked for President Kennedy's Council of Economic Advisors. He was the executive director of a commission tasked with writing a new Baltimore City charter. Paul and I were elected to the Maryland House of Delegates in 1966. His moral compass and intelligent brilliance were obvious, especially when he won an election to the United States House of Representatives in 1970. In just his second term, he wrote the first article of impeachment against President Nixon, charging him with obstruction of justice. In 1976, he became the first United States Senator of Greek American heritage. It's such an honor for me today to hold his seat in the United States Senate. The New York Times described Paul as publicity shy. He was committed to serving Maryland and to serving the United States. He was a senator's senator with a well-deserved reputation for honesty, intellect, integrity, and working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle and preferring results over credit. Paul was a champion of his beloved Eastern Shore and the Chesapeake Bay, of mass transit, and of a peaceful engagement with the rest of the world. He is perhaps best known as the author of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, which Congress passed in the wake of the Enron and WorldCom accounting scandals. The Senate passed that bill by a vote of 97-0. Paul was driven by his vision of a decent and just America based on a strong sense of community and offering fairness and opportunity to all its people. May we all share that vision and dedicate ourselves to working as hard as Paul did to make it a reality.
We are so lucky to have a senator like Ben Cardin who really emulates Paul Sarbanes. It's that time of the evening where I get to introduce two of our two featured speakers tonight, men who were as close to Senator Sarbanes as anyone, except for his wife, of course, Christine. We'll have his son, Congressman John Sarbanes, speak a little later, but right now we're going to hear from the senator's younger brother, Anthony Sarbanes, or Tony, as we all know him. While the senator left Salisbury following high school and dedicated his life to serving Maryland and his country, Tony, following college, came back to Salisbury and became one of our most prominent and indispensable citizens. One of our state's most accomplished educators, Tony is the recipient of numerous community accolades due to his unstinting public service. He received our most prestigious community recognition, the Salisbury Award. He served our nation too, retiring as a Major General in the U.S. Army Reserves. He's the Sarbanes hero who stayed home, and it's my privilege and his to ask Tony Sarbanes to come forward and reminisce about his big brother, Senator Paul S. Sarbanes.
I got to tell you, it's just great to see everybody. This is really a great tribute to my brother. Now, I have to warn you, I'm an emotional Greek kid. So if I get going and then start crying, just bear with me, okay? You can bang on the floor. And I have been warned that Duke is playing North Carolina, and we're taking bets up here at the front table. Now, on behalf of the entire family, I want to thank everyone for attending this evening as we honor my brother. I also want to thank those who worked so hard to put this event together. There were many, but they're Gaines Hawkins, Lee Whaley, and Dr. Harry Basehart. Let's give them a round of applause. They just worked hard. And there are two young ladies, Caitlin and Amy from Salisbury University, back there. Give them a round of applause. Because they would say, Tony, we can't do that. Okay, that's fine. The other thing I really want to mention, it's great to see so many Sarbanes staff members here, or those who worked on committees with him. There are 24 people sitting in this room tonight who worked with my brother on his staff or on a committee. 24, and my brother left office in 2006. Would you stand up, please? Stand up, don't be shy. Now, if you go on the internet today and look up Paul Sarbanes and his early life, it will mention born and raised in Salisbury, and it mentions our parents. I hope in the next few minutes I can tell the story of Paul growing up in Salisbury until he made that decision to attend Princeton University. I plan to tell you a little bit about our Greek immigrant parents as well. By the way, I hope everyone noticed my lovely sister Zoe, who would not stand up, but who rounded out the three Sarbanes kids. So now, Zoe, stand up, please. She's very shy. Stand up. Come on. We always envied her because she got all the beauty, you can tell. Lovely, lovely, very accomplished lady. In case you never knew this, Paul was called Tyke in the family. T-Y-K-E-Y. I never called him Paul. I didn't know who Paul was. They said Paul Sarbanes. Some guy came in the house. But if he said Tyke, I knew exactly who he was. He was called that by his family, his closest friends, his nieces and nephews. And if you check the Y-High yearbook, it says very simply, Tyke. Everybody in the yearbook, they have a nickname, T-Y-K-E-Y. Now, our father, Spiro, and I want to make sure you understand this, Spiro S-P-Y-R-O-S, not the S-P-I-R-O-S for those of you in politics. My father immigrated from a tiny village called Riha, a small mountain village in the state of Laconia, when he was 16 years old. 16 years old. And I've had the pleasure of visiting that little village once. He entered the country through Ellis Island. He had a half-brother, James, who was already here. Our father was about 5 feet 8 inches in height, plenty of hair. Now, why would I mention his hair? If you walk behind me, you know why I mention his hair. Plenty of hair, and he wore glasses. He had absolutely no accent. Absolutely no accent. He almost always spoke to us in English. He also had a fantastic vocabulary derived from many Greek words. You might ask Wycomico County Councilman John Cannon about that from a letter his father received from my father. John said his father was overwhelmed with all the words in there written by my father, Greek derived. Never forgot that. Our father was considerably older than our mother, but it was never an issue. They were extremely devoted to each other. Our father read whatever he could and always had a stack of newspapers tucked under his arm. And let me tell you why I'm talking about my dad. In this room, there were 2 people who knew my father, my sister and me. And maybe Dr. Nevins Todd knew him, but no one else in this room knew Spiro Peter Sarbins. So I just want you to know a little bit about our father who had such a great impact, not only on Zoe and me, but on Tyke as well. He served in the United States Navy during World War I. Yes, World War I. I once asked him what he did in the Navy, and he asked me, what do you think a Greek did on board a ship? Now, what do you think the answer is? Think about it. Well, you got it right. He ran the mess hall on that ship and was involved in convoy crossings the Atlantic Ocean. Like many Greeks of that time, he was in the restaurant business, where as kids we all worked or tried to. I often wonder what he could have done with the educational opportunities afforded people today. Unfortunately, he had one bad habit. He was a heavy, heavy smoker, which is probably why none of us ever smoked. However, I shall always remember the comment he made when Tyke was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship, which shows just how much he thought of this country. Now, this is going to be hard for me to say. He looked at me and he said, only in America could the son of immigrants receive the Rhodes Scholarship. Think about that. Only in America could the son of immigrants receive the Rhodes Scholarship. Unfortunately, he died at age 64, just 1 month before Tyke was scheduled to return from his 3 years abroad as a Rhodes Scholar. He truly had a profound and lasting impact on our family, and he deeply loved this country. There's one other bit of advice my father gave me. I'll never forget it. He said, you know what? When you turn old enough to vote, vote. Vote often. Get out there and vote. Your vote balances out the richest person's vote in this country. And you know what? Isn't it ironic that right now we're going through voting irregularities, voting this, voting that? Show up and vote. It's the most important thing you do. And you know what? I'm not running for office either. But vote. You know, I've never missed a vote in my life. I'm 85 years old. I've never missed a vote. Get out there and vote. Now, let me talk about our mother. Martina Shigonis immigrated to this country with the help of her brothers. She came from the village of Elika, which is also in Laconia, located about 2 miles from the Mediterranean Sea. She actually entered this country through Canada. She was 23 when she married, and we always heard how beautiful she was. And she was. And if you weren't sure, ask her. She would tell you she was beautiful. Now, our mother, who many of you either knew or met, was a strong disciplinarian, spoke Greek to us most of the time, and taught many of us Greek customs. She had the unique talent of getting things done and getting people to help her in need. Let me give you an example. She would call me and say, she never called me Tony, Anthony, or Andoni in Greek. I need you to do this. And I'd say, well, I'd like to help you, but geez, I got several things going on at school where I was a principal, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, don't worry about it. I'll ask Billy, Alan, or Lee, who worked for her. They'll take care of it. Well, what the hell? Then I ended up doing it. So she always was able to maneuver her second son. But we had a good time doing it. She could read English, read the newspaper, watch the news on TV, but she could only write her name in English. If she was watching something on TV of a political nature, she would call me and say, turn on channel so-and-so, watch it, and tell me what they're talking about. I want to know what they're talking about. I would always get that call. Her letters to us in college were in Greek. She was a loving and caring mother, or yaya, which is the Greek word for grandmother, who was respected and loved by her family and by all who knew her. She lived to be 92 years of age. No one loved this country more than those two Greek immigrants. No one. They loved this country. One time I kiddingly said to my mother, if you love Greece so much, why don't you go back? She chased me around the block till I was exhausted. I wanted to provide some family background before I chat with you about Tyke, so that you might understand more about our family. The very first thing to say about Tyke is that he was truly brilliant, and he truly was brilliant. There's no other way to say it. He's just a very brilliant man. And he carefully thought about things before he made a final decision. I want to say that again. He carefully thought about things before he made his final decision. Where's his staff? Are they back there? You know exactly what I'm talking about, staff. And that could be very frustrating to others. Not only was it frustrating to his staff, how about being his brother or sister or children? That could be a little frustrating. As a youngster, Tyke was very fluent in Greek and actually less in English. When he started school, his Greek was his language, because that's what my mother spoke to him with. He attended Miss Harold School, which is a school on North Division Street. I still ride by that house, which enabled him to skip a grade, but which made him young for his class. Our family always attended the county public schools. Tyke graduated from Wycomico Senior High School, which is now Wycomico Middle School, across from the city park. We also know that he never lost an election on the state or federal level. In fact, it was always he never lost an election. You ever hear that? He never lost an election. Wait, the story that he never lost an election has another slant to it. He did lose the election when he ran for president of the student government in high school. That'll turn you around. He lost to Howard Gordy, a close friend. Howard later became Reverend Howard Gordy, a very distinguished and respected Methodist minister in Salisbury. Now, this is a little irony here. Years later, Tyke nominated Howard's daughter, Vicki, to the Naval Academy, back when women first started going to the Naval Academy. She graduated from there, completed her military service, and is now Dr. Vicki Gordy Stith, a Methodist minister in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Tyke was also in the first high school class in Maryland, 1950, that had to attend 12 years in high school instead of 11 in order to graduate. Needless to say, that was a topic of discussion and laughter on occasion if he was extolling his academic successes. So if he gave me a bunch of grief about being such a great scholar, my punchline was, well, why in the heck did it take you 12 years to finish when those ahead of you did it in 11? So that shut him up. Well, for about 2 minutes, Tyke was also an outstanding athlete in high school in both basketball and baseball. In his senior year, his basketball team, coached by the Honorable Sam Seidel, advanced to the state finals in their class, only to lose by 1 point at the very end of the game. Two members of that team who may be familiar to local residents are Harrison Langler, who we just recently lost, and Marvin Long. Tyke was also a very good shortstop with a high school baseball team. He threw right and batted left. He led the team in batting during his junior and senior years. By batting left, it placed him 1.5 feet closer to first base, and I often wonder how many hits he got because of that very short space. He was always thinking. In his youth, we had the Eastern Shore Professional Baseball League, Class D, which does not exist today. Salisbury had the Cardinals. Cambridge had the Dodgers. For some reason, Tyke liked the Dodgers, for some reason. The summer between his junior and senior year in high school, he went to Cambridge for a professional tryout, unbeknownst to our parents. Boy, big mistake. Unbeknownst to our parents. He was told to switch to second base because of his throwing arm and come back the following summer. Guess what? Those plans changed when our parents found out. That was the end of the baseball exploits by Tyke. Tyke was also selected to play in an American Legion All-Star game in Baltimore. When he arrived and met with the coach, he told the coach he was a shortstop. The coach told him he had a shortstop and Tyke was to play second base. Tyke kept insisting he thought he came to play shortstop. Finally, the coach told him a guy named Al Kaline was playing shortstop. Tyke played second. Al Kaline was a great player with the Detroit Tigers and is now in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So much for American Legion shortstop. That ended that thing. Now, in our audience tonight is Roger Richardson, former Secretary of Agriculture for Maryland, and a longtime family friend, loved very much by our mother. Our mother just thought the world of Roger. He played for a Snow Hill High School baseball team that had a 40-game win streak going when Wycomico High School showed up with Tyke at shortstop. The win streak ended. That was it. Why beat him. Ironically, years later, Roger was the only person that I know outside of our family who had Tyke's unlisted home phone number. That friendship continued over many, many years. Our family also truly wants to thank Dr. Nevins Todd. He's here tonight. He was a high school classmate of Tyke's who initiated the effort to have Tyke's name placed on the downtown public library. That effort was strongly supported by Councilman Bill McCain, God bless you, Bill, County Executive John Pasota, the library board who's here tonight, then chaired by Dr. Michelle Canopy, one of my former super students and a lovely lady, and the Wycomico County Council who voted unanimously to name the downtown Salisbury branch of the public library for Tyke. Now, they don't put Tyke up there, they put Sarbins, but they put Paul, which shocked me. But our entire family is most appreciative. However, there is also another story behind that location that is noteworthy. When Tyke was in high school, that building was the Maryland National Guard Armory. Wycomico High School played their varsity basketball games in the National Guard Armory, the current library named for Tyke. There were no bleachers, and spectators sat on metal folding chairs. Could you imagine that today in a basketball game? Metal folding chairs? That building was converted to a library when the Maryland National Guard moved to its current location on Route 50. In the spring of 1950, Tyke was looking at colleges. Here you have an absolutely superior high school student, excellent athlete, and one deeply involved in his high school. Where would he go to college? I can actually only recall Princeton as his choice of college. Princeton was also looking to admit more public school graduates. Now, I know Senator Cardin said Paul was the only one to go, but ironically, 3 members of the class of 1950 from Wycomico Senior High School went to Princeton. 3. That's unheard of. They all graduated in 4 years. One became a banker in Cleveland, and we just heard of his death about 10 days ago. One, the president of Lifesaver Company, and the other became a highly regarded and respected U.S. Senator from Maryland. He retired in 2006 after serving for 36 honorable years in the Congress of our country. 36 honorable years. Bob Schieffer's written a book. I don't have the title. Look at chapter 5. That chapter is devoted to my brother. He said he came to Washington poor, and guess what? He left poor. How often do you ever hear that? But he took his job very. Schieffer's comments about my brother are just overwhelming. There is one special part of my brother's life that I should really emphasize. When he was in England, he had the very good fortune to meet Christine Dunbar, who was also a student at Oxford. Christine was a very tall, attractive lady and a superior balance in whatever Tyke chose to do. If he was not moving at a fast enough pace, Christine wouldn't hesitate to say, you need to get off your A-double scribble, get in the car because we got to get going. Lovely, lovely lady, and she couldn't have been better for him. She taught at Gilman School for many years. Together, they had 3 super children, John, Michael, and Janet. And Janet is now a professor on the West Coast. Guess what? All 3 of those youngsters graduated from Princeton University. All 3, Princeton University. Tyke's life is almost like the American dream. Here you have the son of immigrants who was a superior student, a very good athlete as a young man, whose focus turned to studies, as it should have, then completed 10 years of higher education, all on scholarship. 10 years, all on scholarship. Don't worry, his brother made up for it because they had to pay for every nickel for me to go. A few years later, after finishing Princeton, there was an award given that I would like to mention that my brother got. He was awarded the M. Taylor Pine Prize, which is the highest general distinction award conferred on an undergraduate at their graduation. Think of that. The highest award you can get for graduating from Princeton University. My brother got it, 1954. A few years later, 1987, that very award of highest distinction was awarded to Michael Sarbins when he graduated from Princeton. It was the first time in Princeton's history that this distinguished award was presented to a parent and a child for their service to Princeton. Michael, thank you. And now it's my time to stop talking. So I'm going to conclude with a brief comment that I think would help people as they go through their everyday life, as he interacted with many individuals of various stature. We should keep this in mind in our future dealings, and I don't think it's necessarily unique with my brother. But you know, he would go places, and I said, you know, I didn't know you were there. There was no publicity. I didn't read a thing in the paper. And he said, well, that's not my game. That's not my game. There's a tower out here at the airport. There because of my brother. The dredging of the Wycomico River has continued because of my brother. Schools have bettered themselves because of my brother. I went to the tower at the airport with my brother, and when he walked up on that top floor, it was like the second coming. Honest to goodness, I couldn't believe it. And you know how that came about? He didn't tell me this, but the fellow who chaired the airport commission said, I was meeting with your brother when somebody came in from the aeronautic people where they were going to build towers. And he told him, he said, well, you know, Senator, we can't justify a tower in Salisbury. End of game. No, my brother said, you know what, my mother and brother live in Salisbury, and sometimes I just catch a flight to Salisbury to go see them. You know what, Senator, I think we can build that tower in Salisbury. So it's amazing how things like that happen. So I'm going to conclude with a comment. And if this was one thing that I got after him about, he would do many, many good things and not say a word about it. People didn't know he was doing it. You look at people today, you better get out of the way if you're between them and a TV camera. But he was not that kind of a senator. And I think this quote is in your program. I'm not sure it's with him. You can get a lot done if you let others take some, maybe all of the credit. God bless you, Tyke. Thank you.
Tony, you took my speech. I don't know what to say now. You have my papers. You really do. All right, I've got it all. I would like to say a few words about my brother, Senator Paul Sarbins. We lived over a restaurant on... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to introduce now Senator Chris Van Hollen, who's not here, but who also sent a video.
Hi, I'm Chris Van Hollen, and I'm proud to represent our great state of Maryland in the United States Senate. And I'm especially pleased to be joining all of you for today's Eastern Shore tribute to the late great Senator Paul Sarbanes, a favorite son of Salisbury and an inspiration to us all. Senator Sarbanes never wavered in his commitment to fight for the public interest and uphold the public trust. He had a keen sense of justice, compassion, intelligence, humility, and a commitment to getting real results. And while these qualities propelled him to national recognition and animated his distinguished career in government, Paul Sarbanes never lost touch with his roots and where he came from, on our great Eastern Shore. He was born and raised here by parents who emigrated from Greece and settled in Maryland, where they started their own small restaurant, the Mayflower. And Paul Sarbanes carried the values he learned during his humble upbringing in Salisbury with him throughout his career. And those values could be seen each and every day in his determination to fight for working people, to address the struggles faced by so many of our fellow Americans, and to give each of our fellow citizens a fair shot. I had the privilege of seeing his dedication to these principles in action and up close. First as a young staff member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the 1980s, and then during my time in the House of Representatives. And I continue to receive his mentorship and counsel when I was elected to the Senate. He touched my life, he was a role model, and I know he touched the lives of so many with us today. Last year, all of us lost a great senator. Some of us lost a dear friend, others a loved one. But we should be comforted in the knowledge that he achieved what we would all wish for ourselves, that he served well. He made the world a better place for others. He treated everyone with respect, and he earned their respect in return. Each of us must now do our part to carry on Paul Sarbanes' legacy by continue to serve our communities to the best of our shared abilities. And in serving our communities, we will also serve his memory and the values that guided his life and career. Today, my heart is especially with his beloved brother, Tony Sarbanes, and Tony's wife, Billy, who live in Salisbury and were both very important parts of Senator Sarbanes' life, and with his children, including my friend and colleague, John, who's a great leader in the Congress. And I want to salute the entire Sarbanes extended family for your work to advance the causes to which Senator Sarbanes dedicated his life. We stand with you in that mission.
My favorite thing about Tony's speech was watching John Sarbanes' reaction when Tony was talking about his father and mother, and it was a great moment to see. I don't know if other people were watching him, but I want to introduce him now. He's the U.S. Representative for Maryland's 3rd Congressional District, where he's been serving since 2007. John is known for his work on the environment, education, and governmental reform. Unless the General Assembly has reconfigured it since I prepared these remarks this morning, District 3 includes the state capital of Annapolis, central portions of the city of Baltimore, parts of Anne Arundel, Howard, Montgomery, and Baltimore counties. So he's probably a busy guy covering a lot of terrain. John was born in Baltimore and graduated from Gilman School. Like his father, he graduated from Princeton University and Harvard Law School. It's my honor to introduce Congressman John P. Sarbanes.
Thanks very much, Greg. Good evening, everybody. Uncle Tony, I used to think that it was hard following Elijah Cummings in the delegation, but following you is no treat. That was a really wonderful, wonderful tribute from the heart. Thank you very, very much for that. I sent a text to Beth, his daughter, earlier, because I wanted to make sure I knew what time to be here. And I said, I want to nail down that the social hours is at 6:30 and the welcome is at 7:15. And she said, that's correct for all of us, but my dad has been there since 8 a.m. practicing his speech. So you did a good job. Anyway, I'm going to try to be pretty brief. We have about 20 minutes, and I want Michael to come up and say a few words, and my Aunt Zoe as well. I want to, as Uncle Tony did, I want to thank the committee that put this together. I know it hasn't been easy. It was teed up for last December, I guess, or November, and then we had to push it off for obvious reasons. But we got lucky today, and this is a wonderful turnout. But I also want to salute Gaines Hawkins and Lee Whaley and Dr. Harry Basart for sort of anchoring the effort. And I want to thank Uncle Tony and Aunt Billy. If the Sarbanes home has been here in Salisbury, home, sort of the more abstract idea of home for decades, then it's Uncle Tony and Aunt Billy who have really kept the home fires burning. So thank you so much for all of that. I want to thank Salisbury University, President White, for hosting us tonight in this beautiful space, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, President Anderson, for continuing such good work in my father's name. The Sarbanes Lecture Series here at Salisbury University, which is part of the Institute for Public Affairs and Civic Engagement, the UMES Scholarship Fund, the Paul S. Sarbanes Endowment Fund. Of course, there's the Paul Sarbanes Coastal Ecology Center on Assateague, which is an extension of UMES. And I want to thank all of you here tonight because you're your ticket purchases and contributions are supporting these outstanding programs at these two institutions. I've got two clips I'm going to play tonight. The first is my father, in his own words, talking about Salisbury University and UMES, and then we'll have one a little bit later, but why don't we tee that one up now if we can.
We got John Lewis. I asked him if he would come down to Salisbury State University down on the Eastern Shore and give a major address, and he agreed to do that. So in effect, we brought him down, and it was a very successful evening. I mean, the auditorium at the college was packed, and as always, he gave a very moving address. But and then we developed a close relationship with the University of Maryland Eastern Shore campus down in Princess Anne, which is one of the historically black universities. And we worked closely with them on a lot of projects that came along to try to enhance the standing of the university. And actually, they run some very good programs there. They really have done a good job. And but that was all part and parcel of this focus on making the society work for everybody.
He was very proud of these two institutions. He loved having his name associated with them in the formal way in which that's happened. So again, thank you to them. I also, as was already done, want to thank my father's staff assembled there in the back of the room. You know, over the course of his 40 years in public service, he knew, he understood that they were the ones who made it all happen. That every success he had was due to their dedication and to their own sense of public service. You know, he could be a tough taskmaster, but he chose people that shared his commitment to hard work and integrity. And he drew tremendous strength from those who worked alongside him for so many years. Not sure you appreciate how much that's the case. My dad could get stressed, you know, there's a lot going on in that job. And he really relied upon and depended on his staff. And I know in the later years, it would take about 4 or 5 hours just to go over his schedule every single day. Thank you for your patience back there. But he really counted on you, and I wanted to extend a special thanks to the staff. I want to thank the city of Salisbury, this wonderful place that he called home. He was never more comfortable. You could feel kind of the pressure valve being released as we would come driving down Route 50 from Baltimore. He knew he was coming home. And, you know, I would see him sitting there at my grandmother's dining room table, enjoying a home-cooked meal, looking out through the window on the backyard, remembering a childhood that was full of supportive adults, full of strong community values. He just, you know, he loved Salisbury, he loved the Eastern Shore. So the few words I wanted to share tonight, and there'll be very few, come mostly from the words that I shared on the House floor a couple days after my father passed away, because, you know, looking back, I'm not sure that there's anything new or different I could say to reflect on his life and career beyond those recollections. I guess put another way, in this instance, the things you say first are the things you feel most. A lot of the tributes that came in after my father died talked about him being a workhorse, not a show horse. Uncle Tony alluded to this, the idea that you put your head down, you get the job done, you try to build consensus where you can, but you always remember that you're here for a reason, to do what you can do to help people. And that perspective was instilled in him early on in this place, based on the fundamental idea that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can succeed. My dad, of course, lived a very full life, and unquestionably he made a difference in the lives of others, which is all he ever really wanted to do. I mean, he knew from an early age that he wanted to be in politics. That was clear. But his motivation was looking at his own life, the son of Greek immigrants who came to this country with very little. Looking at that and the opportunities he had for education and advancement, his motivation was to make those available to others. He loved being with people. He had a dry sense of humor. As you know, he enjoyed banter with everyone who crossed his path. He was intensely interested in the journey that others had taken to whatever station they held in life. And he was always asking, where are you from? What do you do? What's next for you? Again, that curiosity, I think, came from humility at the trajectory of his own life, from such humble beginnings to achieve such heights. He had an inherent integrity. That was the word I heard most when he passed away, an inherent integrity that was strengthened by always striving to meet the expectations of those who put their confidence in him. He just didn't want to let people down. In politics, he was motivated, as I said, by the burning conviction that every individual has a dignity and the potential to succeed if given a fair shot. And he was determined others would have those same opportunities that he had enjoyed. I remember I came home one time, he was sitting in the living room on the couch. I don't know what the issue was that day that had gotten him riled up, but he banged on the side of the couch and he said, "I'm for the little guy. I'm for the little guy." He might as well, in that moment, have been stating his purpose in public life. That's what motivated him from the moment he got up in the morning until the moment he went to sleep at night. And when I first got to Washington 15 years ago, a day wouldn't pass without someone, an elevator operator, a cafeteria worker, a member of the Capitol Police, someone saying to me, "Your father was a terrific man." He saw them. He saw people that others took for granted, and it made a difference in their lives. So before we close out, two more people who knew him best, my brother Michael, man, so I want to yield some time for them to come up here quickly and give a couple of comments.
Good evening. I'm going to pick up on a theme that you've heard a lot of, but I just want to spend a little more time on it, which is about education and the central value of that to my dad and to our family and to my mom and to our family. In fact, it's interesting. In our family, I can go down the list. Uncle Tony was a long-time, incredibly distinguished educator, inspiration to a lot of people here. Aunt Zoe was a teacher. Aunt Billy was a teacher. Beth was Teacher of the Year here in Wicomico County. Margot, Jimmy's wife, was a teacher for years. My sister Janet, a teacher. I can go on. You get the feel for it. Education was fundamental to us and to the way our family experienced this journey in America. You heard about, well, he attended Princeton, and then my brother and my sister and I attended Princeton. My two sons both also graduated from there. My cousin Dimitri graduated from there. I want to give you a little bit of an insight into that, and kind of what that meant in our family story. You heard Uncle Tony talk about my grandfather, whom I never met, but I got to know through stories. And one of the stories was that my grandfather was incredibly touched and proud and amazed in a way that my dad had received a scholarship to go to Princeton. And he went up to Princeton, and one of the first times they visited, and he brought a ham from the restaurant to give to the president of Princeton, President Dodds. So he went around, the president lived on campus at that point. And he went around to the servants' entrance of the house to present this ham to, give that to, President Dodds for the president and his family to be able to eat. And the person who answered the door asked him, who he was. Well, he said, my son is a freshman here at Princeton, and I brought this ham for the president. I just wanted to drop it off. And they said, well, wait here a second. And then to the back door came the president of the university, President of Dodds, and asked my grandfather to come in, and they sat down and had tea and talked about the events of the day and kind of what was going on in the world. And unbeknownst to my father, whenever my grandfather would visit the college, he would go and stop by and see his friend, President Dodds. So for us, the idea of what Princeton meant was an extension of the American dream, an extension of opportunity to people who had not been born to that, who were not expected to have access to that. My grandmother was, you also heard Uncle Tony talked about my grandmother. She had very high standards and was a very strict, she kind of held you, my mom was the same way, she held you to very high standards. But the story I love about my grandmother is my father's last term in the Senate, he was awarded an award from the Greek Restaurant Owners Association, and my grandmother came along because she was had been a Greek restaurant owner, and they asked her to come up and speak. And part of her remarks, they said, you must be very proud of your son. And she goes, well, yes. She said, he's been a good boy, meritora, which means so far. So she never really let up the pressure. Education for our parents, and this was very true of my mother as well as my father, that was the way that they were able to experience the larger world. Both of them came from backgrounds where, getting an education was not sort of a guaranteed thing. And for them, this was sort of how they were able to experience the world and to contribute to it. Education was also, for my dad, very much connected with our democracy and with the functioning of democracy. Education was not just something that you did personally, that you gained, expertise or you gained a certain knowledge personally, but it was how the fundamentals of democracy were taught, the virtues and practices that make democracy work. So listening carefully, arguing from evidence, considering all the evidence that was available, thinking with independence and integrity about whatever issues in front of you, disagreeing respectfully without being disagreeable, but also having very strong principles and strong values. That was fundamental to my parents' view and my dad's view of education, as well as his view of the way the democratic society should function. One of the things that has always stood out to me, because I went to, especially once I got my driver's license, I went to lots of forums where my dad was always giving a constituent forum. And the format of those was, he'd get up and talk about whatever was going on for 10 minutes or so, and there'd be question time. And there was a real pattern to it, because someone would ask a question, and almost inevitably, he would really think about it, and my brother talked about this, or I can't remember, it was maybe I think Uncle Tony said that, this question of he would think about things. This is sort of a joke in our family, but, my dad would say, somebody'd ask a question and go, well, let me think about that. And then he would think. And they would think some more. And then he'd have a response, which I get, my children tease me about the same thing now. But so he would start off and he would say, well, that's a good question. And then he would go through the issue. You sort of talk about, these are the issues that are involved. There's this side of the argument, there's this side of the argument. And here's my position on it, and here's why I take this position. So that people, even if you disagreed with him, and I've had so many people say this to me over the years. They say, well, I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but I appreciated the way he did the job. So that the conversation about the issue was respecting people as citizens, was respecting people as thinkers, was respecting people as individuals who had something to contribute to the society. And I think that's it's something to bear in mind in the heavily polarized way that our politics has become today. So just in closing, it is incredibly appropriate that we're here tonight and the proceeds of tonight go to Salisbury University. And Dr. White, thank you for having us. And to UMES and Dr. Anderson, so great to see you. I teach now in Baltimore City, and many of my students graduate and come to UMES and to Salisbury, so I appreciate everything that's going on here. But it could not be more fitting and appropriate that we're here and that the proceeds for tonight go towards these causes, because what's bringing us together tonight is so appropriate as a memorial tribute to my dad, and also so appropriate as a commitment to extending the values that guided his life into the future. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Good evening to everyone, and for those who were so instrumental in bringing us all together, we're very grateful as a family. I'm really here just with a few footnotes. So in listening to those who preceded me, I'm going to make some commentary in reference to other things that they themselves have said. One of the comments is the students from Salisbury, from Y High, who went to Princeton. And that's a tribute to this community. In a way, a community comes together because there was someone who had graduated from Princeton who had received this message from the university saying, we want to bring in more public school guys. And this gentleman took that initiative and said, we have to send Salisbury boys to this university. So thank you, Salisbury. You heard reference to my brother having these sort of delusional fantasies that he might be a professional baseball player. And actually was hesitant, considered dropping out of, not going on to college and going into that sort of realm. And my father was, of course, incensed and said to him, you are going to go to school. And when you finish school, you can opt for whatever you want to do. You can be a bum as far as I'm concerned, but you're going to be an educated bum. The teachers, because we've mentioned education and how strong a value it is in our family. I sort of got the buy because I had these, I'm going to say, considerably older brothers, given that you know Tony's age, and you know my brother Taiki's age. But I had the same teachers. So when I came through high school, having been preceded by my two stellar brothers, I essentially just showed up in class and succeeded as a student thanks to their success ahead of me. Just one final little remark, and that is in reference to my dad and the village they came from in Greece, which is a mountainous village where life is very bleak. It's a very rocky. You can understand when you go there why there were so many immigrants, so many Greeks who came to America as immigrants. At the time that we went, it was 1985, we went with my mom and the entire family, all of this crew was there, this sort of my generation and the next generation. And at one point, we had to stop the van so that a shepherd could cross the road with his flock of sheep. And Tony's in the back of the car, back of the van. He's going, "Thank God Papa came to America." And I want to say, thank God he came to Salisbury. One last comment from me. I'm married and lived in New Jersey with my beloved husband, Dean. And every time we went to a conference and people would say, well, where are you from? I would sort of mutter, well, I live in New Jersey, but I proudly boast, I'm from Maryland.
So as we end, I want to return to this theme of humility that we've heard about in talking about my father tonight. You know, again, his general operating procedure was if you share the credit, if you don't seek credit, you can get a lot more done. I will say he was helped in his humility by the wonderful woman that came into his life like a lightning bolt, my mother, Christine, who could match him step for step in intellect and in interest. She knocked his socks off. She really did. We miss them both tonight, but we take comfort in the fact that their final resting place is here together in Salisbury. So we know that our dad had national impact, no question. Leader on affordable housing, champion of the environment, author of the most consequential standards for corporate conduct and responsibility in a generation, and so much more. But at the end of the day, it was the little things, the constituent service, that he took the most pride in. A few years ago, I convinced him to do an oral history, and that's the excerpt you saw earlier, but we have 20 hours of him on camera talking about his life and career. So I'm going to let him close out this part of the program in his own words, talking about some constituent work that he did right here on the Eastern Shore. And I selected this excerpt because of all the many reflections on his career, and he had the time to do it in those 20 hours. This story you're going to hear was among the 2 or 3 constituent stories that he told the most. And I think there's a reason for that. As you'll see, it really captures his philosophy of public service. So you won't hear from me again. Thanks to all of you for making this evening so special, celebrating the life and service of Paul Sarbanes, son of immigrants, son of the Eastern Shore, born and bred in Salisbury, Maryland, a proud American who never forgot where he came from.
We had a situation in one of the rural towns on the Eastern Shore. And when they delivered the mail, the postman, he'd come down the street here. And there'd be these big houses up there. And he'd go up to the house and put the mail in the mailbox. And then as he moved on down the street, the composition of the neighborhood would change, and the houses would get small, much smaller, much smaller. The complexion of the people living in the houses changed too as you went down the street. So they went from white to black. And down the street there, they were going to, instead of the postman going through the gate or whatever and up to the house, which was not way back like the big houses were up here, but not too far back. They were going to require those people to put a post box at the street. So some people came to us about that. A couple of pastors, ministers from the church, their churches, and they pointed out the situation. So I got the postal people into a meeting in my office. This was when I was in the Senate. And I said, well, now, what's happening here? As I understand it, up here with the big houses and the white residents, you're going to continue to go up to the house and put the mail through the door slot. But when you get down this way, with the little houses and the African American residents, you're now going to require them to put a mail receptacle out at the pavement or at the curb, and you're not going to go up to the house anymore. Well, what's the rationale for this policy? Of course, if you lay it out like that, there isn't a rationale. That's at least not an acceptable rationale that can stand the light of day. So they dropped the project, and they went on delivering the mail, and that's the way it ought to work. And I felt it's not a big issue, but we got some justice for those people.
What do I say next, John? I don't think I've ever called a congressman by his first name before. Real quick, did anyone notice that Michael stands at the podium just like Senator Sarbanes? When he wanted to make a point, he would do that thing? Did you learn that from your dad? I want to thank you all so much for being here. The committee had a vote on what to do with the beautiful flowers at the center of your table. My vote was that people wrestle for them. But the decision was made that the tables talk among themselves, and whoever has a birthday closest to this date gets to take the flowers home, the beautiful tulips. So talk among yourselves and decide who's going to get the flowers. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We love Senator Sarbins and the Sarbins family. Thank you, thank you.